Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Purpose Up podcast. Today, I am super excited to have with me Ajit Nawalkha. Welcome, Ajit.
Excited to be here, Ben.
Um, Ajit, tell us a little bit about yourself. You do so many things; it's hard to summarize. But tell us about what you're up to these days.
It's actually not those many things, but they're all around the area of saying how humanity can move forward. And of course, there are different ways of really being able to inspire that change. There are different ways of really being able to express that in the outside world. And so they happen to look like many different things, but the intention is always the same. The intention is always being able to say, how can we push humanity forward towards a positive direction? How can we have a positive impact in the world through mostly education and trainings and so forth? And coaching, so forth, of course. And that's kind of where the intention is, and all the companies kind of go in that area. So right now, my focus is, which is what we're talking about today as well, a little bit, is my book, which is called Live Big. It's coming out very soon. And as the book comes to closer, it comes with the intentionality of being able to change the dialogue for entrepreneurs to not only consider business as the only aspect of their life and the only purpose of their life, but to be able to reconsider and really ask the question of saying, hey, what is it that what a complete life looks like? What is it that we got to do as entrepreneurs to be able to not only have a great business, but also have a great life at the same point, to be able to grow our businesses, get exponential growth, but at the same point of time, also live a balanced, happy, healthy, fulfilled lives. And that's really the intention of the book. That's really the drive of the book. That's really where the book goes. And it comes from not only my coaching experiences, but I have studied many other people who have done some phenomenal work in that and put together a usable perspective shift for entrepreneurs, trainers, coaches, experts to be able to read into the book, listen to that perspective, look for that perspective, and see if that really can create that transformation in their life. My intention is to be able to do that.
All right, awesome. Yeah, and I've read a few chapters of the book, and I think it does just that. I mean, I love even how in the book you mention, talking with your wife about how to make your marriage great, which you probably don't always see in your average book about entrepreneurship. I love all the different things you do and your story of evolution. So I want to take it back a little bit because you come from humble beginnings. Can you tell us a little bit about your backstory?
Yeah, so I grew up in a household of about 23 people. I come from a small town called Jaipur in India, where I grew up with all my cousins, my parents' cousins, and my grandparents, all of us living into a small house. And so we were about 23 people sharing common space. And and it basically creates, as a kid, especially in my early formative years, I became somebody who really wanted to have abundance in his life. Not only abundance of context of money, but actually abundance in context of space. I'm an introvert, and so for me it was key that I had the space and availability for myself. Now, I didn't really have that as a child, but as I grew up, I of course definitely got really fond of it. And so a lot of my early behavior was depending on how and what can get me faster to a place where I can buy a house for my family and myself. And so early on in life, I was first taught that you need a career, or you need to be an engineer, doctor, and accountant to be able to get that. That's how all Indians kind of grow up.
Right.
And so that was my first intention. I was trying to be an engineer, or trying to qualify to be an engineer, only to realize that that's something that I absolutely did not like. And because of that, I would probably be a really bad one. Even if I became one, if by any chance I did pass the exams, I would probably become a really bad engineer and will be unhappy on top of it, which got me to question it. I had the great support of some of my teachers who inspired me to be able to question it more effectively, and that led me to be able to share that challenge with my family and say, hey, listen, this is where I'm at, and I don't know if I can continue to do this. And can we look at it from a different perspective? Can I try something else? And my father's a very kind person. He was generous enough to say, it's okay. I'm not a very wealthy person. I won't be able to fund your dreams per se, but at the same point of time, as much as I can do, I will do. And
Right.
that kind of got me started to experiment with life a little bit. And I joined a student organization as a part of that journey. And that student organization actually allowed me to discover a lot more. That organization is called ISEC. It's a student body that was created to create world peace. And so it facilitates a lot of exchange of ideas in many different countries and people from many different countries, which showed me that unity was possible, that showed me that possibilities were much beyond entrepreneur, accountant, or a doctor, and that there is so much more that is there to be able to done in the world, and you can create abundance with that. Which would again keep me in that stage of saying, hey, what can I do more? What can I do more? Because I didn't really know what I want. I
Right.
just really know that I wanted what as an outcome. I didn't really know how to really get there. And that got me to experiment a lot. And one of those experiments led me to start a company, a tech company, when I was 24, I think, or something like that. And as I was starting the company, I got funded by one of my employers at that time to be able to start that social network in India. But then Facebook came, and so that social network didn't really work out. But it did teach me something. It taught me that the future belongs to internet. The
Right.
future is in the web, and that got me interested to reach out to some of my friends who were living in different parts of the world through ISAC, and be able to say, hey, do you know any company that is doing work in this space? And I found one of my friends from Malaysia responded, I think, Ajit, you'll love this company. This is started by people from ISAC as well. And they're amazing, and they're new, and they're small, but I think you'll love working there, at least for a little bit.
Right.
And that got me introduced to a small little company then called Mind Valley.
Right.
At that time, Mind Valley was a 12, 15-person operation. It was a small, tiny company, maybe 20 people. And I started there as an intern about 10 years ago from today. And in the next 5-7 years, I would become the CEO of the company. I would grow the company from where it is, alongside, of course, the founder of the company, to where it is today. And in that journey, I learned a lot. I got engaged with a lot of coaches, trainers, entrepreneurs. And as I was leading the company, one of the realization that came to me as I was doing that process was that I had become abundant for sure, but
Right.
I had become abundant only in context of money.
Right.
My life was not a life of choice. My life was, and it was not because of the company that I was working with. It was more because of my own personal dialogue. You know how sometimes we progress in life, but we forget to leave the baggage behind.
Right.
We kind of carry that baggage. So I carried that baggage of the 23-year-old who was trying to get out of a house of 23 people, right? So for me, I was still carrying that baggage and operating like I was somebody who was scarce versus I wasn't. And that drove me to make some bad choices in life, which costed me my relationships, costed me my health, costed me all those things that shouldn't be the case and doesn't have to be the case. Got me to revisit life, and fortunately, by that time, I had started some companies on the side that could fund whatever I wanted to experiment next. And that led me to the idea of EverCoach and creating EverCoach. And EverCoach was created from that reality of saying, hey, I have all these trainers, I have all these educators that have transformed my life.
Right.
What if I could support these individuals to transform theirs? What if I could support their journey? Because as I support their journey, they would impact more people like me. And as they impact more people like me, we will have a greater society, or more society that is fulfilled and satisfied in what they want to create, and be able to question really tough things and so forth.
Right.
And that gave birth to EverCoach.
Awesome. Want to dive in a little bit deeper into the 23-year-old mindset when you were much older. In your book you talk about the power of the subconscious. When you were kind of going through that rough time and that transition from your kind of younger mental state to the more mature mental state, what methods did you use to kind of uncover the baggage you were carrying around, and how did you shift yourself into kind of catching up with yourself, if that makes sense?
Well, I wouldn't be able to say there was like one thing that leads to that, because I don't think it's ever one thing.
Right.
It can be a moment where the shift happens, but it's almost a compounding effect of many things that happen at the same time. The moment that created the biggest shift for me to be able to realize that I'm carrying a baggage was one of the instances that happened uh, in my journey, as I had already moved on from being the CEO, because I had then gone on a journey. I was like, I am definitely not living a fulfilled and happy life. I have to do something about it. So the first few things I could do is to create space in life, right? Because I was like, I know this is not working, but to be able to find what will work, I need to create some space. But running a company like Mindvalley is time consuming. Of course, it's a big enterprise. It's one of the biggest brands. So it took a lot of, I had to step out. I had to be able to say, hey, I need to step out to be able to find myself again, right?
Right.
And that got me to step out of the company and got me on a journey of really finding myself again. And in that journey, in about, it was almost about 6 or 8 months after I had stepped out as CEO, my current wife and then a friend showed up in my life. At that time, I was just meeting her and so forth. And as she showed up in my life, she's a very straight shooter. She's a very one of those coaches that you really want by your side because she's going to kick your butt, right?
Right.
So she one day asked me a question, which was coming out of one of the behaviors that I had, which was to be. I used to think that making fun of people was funny, and in my head it was funny. It was, I wasn't meaning bad to anyone, but how it was reflected on somebody else was very different.
Right.
And I didn't realize that. Nobody had told me. Again, it was one of those things where people don't tell you certain things because either because of your position or because of how you show up, because they feel like they have no impact on you or whatever that is. That
Right.
everybody has a story, right? But because of that, nobody had ever showed me or told me that there was something like that was happening. And so for me, I was just being funny. I was just being candid. I was just being somebody who's, pulling a leg or something like that, right? So that's how I operated. But it was showing up very differently for the people that I was doing it to. And so she spotted one of the things that I used to say. And as she spotted it, she said, why don't you ask your team members what they feel about this? Because I know you say this everywhere. And so I kind of asked one of the team members at that time on my team, and she said that particular, especially those types of jokes, once made her cry.
Oh, wow.
Because she knew I didn't mean any bad. She knew that I wasn't trying to be hurtful, but it was her story that was causing more pain because of my unthought through comment, you can say, right?
Right.
Because of course you don't know somebody else's story, but you could be kind in your way of showing up, right? Or you can be a little bit more careful. And I wasn't being that. And that was, I think, the first time that I shifted to realize, because that dialogue was coming from my old student days when I was an ISECer, with the student organization that I talked about. Because in that student organization, like any student organization, you can imagine when you're dealing with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, it's banter, it's putting each other down, it's being cocky, it's being all of that, because that's what 18, 19, 20-year-olds do.
It's like
right?
a
They're
sport.
snarky to each other, right? That's what it is. It's about winning the moment, winning the argument, not really thinking about what's the perspective to life a lot of times, right? And because of that, I was operating that way. And I realized, oh, I'm operating like my 20-year-old while I was, at that time, I was like 30 something or 32 at that time, 31, 32. So I'm still carrying a baggage that's almost like over 10 years old. And I'm acting like I'm 10 years younger me, even if I'm not really like that person anymore, right? But in some area of my life that's showing up. And that's where I started to go into that journey of saying, oh, it's not just one thing that is bringing that out of me looking at my younger self, but many things. And so started that effect of me aiming to question everything after that, going, oh, where is this showing up? If it's showing up in just a snarky comment sometimes, where else is this showing up?
Right. Yeah. No, I can totally identify with that. Making fun of each other, being blood sport as a youngster, and I remember when I had to kind of reprogram some of that. When we talk about leadership and where you've evolved to, what do you think when we look at kind of subconscious programming? How can us as entrepreneurs who have some of that bad programming help to shift ourselves to be more abundant and be more of service to others?
Well, I wouldn't say bad programming, first of all. It is just the programming that is. There is no bad or good programming. It's the choices that we make. It's
Right.
more of saying, hey, which is the version of me that I'm willing to accept for now? Because there will be a different version next time. It's not a better version or a worse version. It's just a version. It's almost, it's like playing a video game. You have to cross through levels to go to the next one,
Right.
in a way. All right. So I wouldn't say a bad version or a bad mindset or anything like that. All mindsets are good and all of them are bad. Depends on the perspective you look at it, right? And all mindsets can be proven bad if you choose to prove it bad, right? Um, at least that's my understanding of it.
Right.
Now, how do we change programming per se? Because that's kind of the sense of the question that I probably would suggest that we tackle or discuss is that if you are concerned about an area of your life, you have to ask a question to yourself or have a valid coach to be able to ask those questions to yourself to be able to say what's the area of your life that you're concerned about. Or it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be an extreme situation where it's gone to the levels of death or anything like that, but it is concerning enough. Like it's something that you would love to have a better version of, or you'll love to have a better outcome, whatever that better means for you, right? So it depends. So it depending on, okay, fine, this is the version that I want, and that's the first step to really have that awareness. And if you don't have that awareness yourself, to get the right help to get that awareness, do programs or events that allow you to be able to really question what you do and be able to see life in a different perspective. It's like me going into ISEC or me going into being an intern at Mind Valley or whatever. I'm just getting it in different perspective. It changes your story of saying, all right, I got this perspective now. Do I like my usual perspective? Do I like this new perspective? If you like a new perspective, then you start to reprogram based on where you want to go. And usually you can associate, and again, there is no generalized solution. It won't be fair to give a generalized solution, but something that you can use in those times when you've discovered where you want to go is what I call a waterfall approach, right? You got to see, hey, here is where I would like to go. And then
Right.
you go, okay, why do I want to go there? Right. And you will find out why, or why do you really want to go there? And then you find out what is it that will lead me to really create that why outcome or that final outcome. And then you start to look at what is my current behavior in this reality right now that is counter to that new behavior that I want to create. And then you create behavioral change around it, right? So you kind of have to go look one step at a time and go, okay, what is it that I'm really diagnosing? It's almost like running a diagnostic test on yourself on why do you operate the way you operate? What is it that, what are the values that are driving that that operation for you? And as those values are discovered, you go, oh, where's those values coming from? Oh, my values are coming from this reality. What is the new reality that I want to create? What are the values that I need? What are the experiences I'll need to secure to be able to create these values, right? How do I create a behavioral shift in those values? What am I doing? And by behavioral shift, you want to not only create, you basically need a new habit in a way, right? So it's not only a function of you just saying, oh, today I'll start being healthy. It's about being able to create the conditioning around you to be healthy, reminders around you to be healthy. I'm giving a hypothetical example here.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to really constantly change your language and be aware about it. And over the course of 60, 90, or 100 days, you will see that you will start to be healthy. But it's not going to happen because you made a decision, because that's what sometimes people say. You make a decision and that's where it starts. No. Decision is, yes, a starting point maybe, but that's pretty much it, because most decisions we don't follow through. And that's why those changes don't happen. The changes can happen if we actually follow through on the decisions that we make. So decision is not the end all. Decision is not what leads to the final outcome. Decision just starts the process if you stick to that decision.
Right. So I think it's a good segue back into your book. A lot of people want to become entrepreneurs, and I know you make a big case for people to be entrepreneurial in your book. For people who are scared to take that step, I mean, you probably answered some of that in your previous question, but you make the case that almost everyone should try becoming an entrepreneur.
No, I never make that case in the book. I don't make that case. I don't think everybody should try to be an entrepreneur. It is a drive that if you want to be an entrepreneur or not. Not everybody is an entrepreneur, doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, doesn't have to be an entrepreneur. There is no reason for somebody to believe that only entrepreneurs can live a life of choice. That's not my argument in the book. And if you'll read the book, even as a high-performing professional or just a professional, you'll find use of it in context of non-entrepreneurship. It is written in context of entrepreneurship, because that was what me and my publisher decided to write. But the book is actually used for irrespective if you're an entrepreneur or not, because it gives you the valid perspective shifts that allow you to actually make a decision on how you want to live your life in a much bigger and better way and have a life of choice. Now, what I do discuss in the book is a chapter that is called Don't Burn Your Bridges,
Right.
which basically addresses the idea of saying, if you want to be an entrepreneur, don't do what people sometimes glorify, which is jump with both feet into it. That's not what you want to do. Don't burn your bridges, like people often say, burn your bridges, go all in. No, I don't think that's any smart entrepreneur. None of the smart entrepreneurs do that. They usually actually keep their bridge. They build the foundation on the other side. And when the foundation is fully solid and they can believe in that foundation, that's when they burn their bridges, because then it's the right time to burn the bridge. Because you don't want to go to a half-ass land while still discovering that if there is wildlife that'll come kill you, right? So you don't want to go to a different side of the bridge before actually fully stabilizing yourself, having your whole property taken care of, then go ahead and burn the bridge. And that's fine, because the foundations are set and you can build a building on it the way you want, but don't burn your bridges before. So my argument is actually against entrepreneurship in a lot of cases with that. It's like, if there is no foundation, if that is not your drive, you will figure it out. So don't burn your bridge and jump 2 feet into it. First, see if you even want that, because sometimes we don't want to be an entrepreneur. We don't want a company. We don't want a business. A lot of times, all we need is choice. All we want to do is to have a life of choice. All we want to do is, we hate our job. That doesn't mean you need to become an entrepreneur. That just simply means get a better job.
Right.
That simply means get something that you're excited about. Create a work environment for yourself, which gives you choice. It has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is, some people like it, some people won't. And a lot of times, honestly, you might like entrepreneurship, but only to a certain extent. And that's also another reality that it's absolutely okay if that happens. A lot of times what happens as entrepreneurs or wanting to be entrepreneurs is we believe we have to build big companies.
Right.
You don't have to build big companies. Not everybody is set out to create $1 million or multi-million-dollar company. You don't have to build any of that. Build what you feel is right. Alignment is what is important. Being an entrepreneur is not. Your size of your company is not. Alignment is important. Are you excited to build what you're building? Are you willing to pay the price that it'll take for you to build? Are you going to continue to be happy as you build your company? One of the chapters, and this is actually the artwork from the book. I don't know if what Natasha sent you had the artwork, but this actually is the artwork. There's one of the chapters that right there is called Happy First.
Right.
And that's one of the first dialogues that I have in the book, which talks about you gotta stand on the foundation of your happiness. You can't stand on the foundation of your misery. You don't want to be a martyr building a company. There is no point doing that.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned alignment, and you also talk about intuition in your book. I know intuition for me has been a focus over the past couple of years, trying to figure out how to turn up the volume on it, how to understand when it's intuition, when it's fear. How do you think living big and intuition relate to each other?
Well, intuition is, all of us have intuition. We just don't utilize it. So by intuition, so think about our brains. It's said about anywhere between 2 to 5% of our brain is fully utilized in a conscious way, like our front side of the brain. And 95% of or over is subconscious or unconscious or automatic, as we say it. These are learned behaviors. This is how we operate. We breathe while I'm talking. This is all happening automatically. I don't have to think about the breathing. This is all my unconscious. So all of us have that unconscious, and tapping into that unconscious to connect the dots is your ability to be intuitive about it, right? Intuition is just the connect your brain wires being able to connect something that has not been connected before, and you feeling like as if you had an epiphany, right? That epiphany is created because you allowed your brain to process information that was beyond what your conscious brain could have ever processed, because it has a lot more processing power. So intuitive intelligence, which is what I talk about, is about informing your intuition with enough data points, with enough insight that it goes into your brain, and then giving your brain enough space for it to be able, and by space, I call it boring time sometimes, creating boring time, things that you don't really need to do, like fold your clothes for once. right? This boring time, which are mundane activities that don't need any creative juice, actually creates space in your brain to find an intuitive idea or your epiphanies to come through much more easily. Have you ever wondered that all our best ideas come at the most really random times?
Right.
You taking a shower, you going for a walk, you being in the fields. That's some of the best ideas that we got for our businesses and for our lives, were us doing boring, boring, boring activities. And the reason for that is because your subconscious has space to not constantly take data, but actually process data. Because it's taking a lot more data. If you're reading all the time, typing all the time, on the phone all the time, this is our subconscious saying, oh, there's more data to collect. Let's keep collecting. Whereas when you're doing something that is a mundane activity, it's still taking a lot of data, but nowhere near as much as data as it is taking if you're distracted by social media trying to do 1 million things at a time. It's not as much data. It's a lot less data. And so now it has time to really process all the data that it has collected already to say, oh, can I make some meaningful information out of this? Can I create something that will actually ease my brain a little bit less? And that's really what happens with intuitive intelligence. So it's about creating, firstly, enough logical data to go in. So not just bullshit data that comes off your Instagram feed, but actual logical data, like reading a real book or listening to a real podcast, listening to a real audiobook, getting a book that actually shares perspective, right? So your brain gets new information, your subconscious gets new information, and your conscious gets new information, and then giving it space to let it process. Which is why one of the best ways you can read Live Big is to actually read a chapter and then leave it alone. Read a chapter, go for a coffee. Read a chapter, go for some tea. Read a chapter, just chill out for 30 minutes. You will have a greater epiphany if you try this as you're reading Live Big.
Seems so novel just to try and chill out for 30 minutes. I don't know. That's tough these days.
It is not. We make it tough. And it is very true. And you're right when you say it seems really tough, but it is not tough. So it's called social comparison, the dialogue that restricts us a lot in being able to take a chill pill, is social comparison. Social comparison is a research that was done by, I think it was Stanford University, where they found that students and adults constantly compare themselves with other people, and so that changes the fragment of reality on how they perceive themselves. They change because of looking at somebody else, and that has happened and amplified because of these devices that we have. Is we keep looking at it, and because of that we constantly compare. So even if we are doing great in context of our own reality, we are doing tremendously worse in context of somebody else's reality. The worst part is somebody else's reality is flawed in itself, because what you're seeing of someone else's reality is maybe 30 seconds of their 24-hour life, which is in nowhere something to compare to, because it's like comparing the best 30 seconds of their life to your 24 hours. That's not fair to even in comparison theory, because it's like not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to watermelons, and they're completely different things. They are completely different sizes and completely different flavors. You can't possibly be comparing them. There is no comparison between this, but we tend to do that. And because of that, what happens is we feel we don't have time because we are losing at all times. But if we lose, and not even we don't even have to lose it, because it's impossible for human beings to not feel emotions, right? So you like it or you hate it, you will end up social comparing. But what you can do is you can be aware of it. You can go, okay, I know what's happening to me right now, but is that really true? Is that really true what I see in somebody else's reality, that it's comparatively bad in my reality? Or am I comparing to myself, or am I comparing to somebody else? Because everybody is an individual universe in itself. Everybody is their own reality. There is no one that can be comparable to that reality, because all our stories are 100% different, right? All our DNAs are 100% different. It's not matchable, not 100%, but you get my drift, right? They're different, right? So, and because of that, our realities are different, and there is no reason for us to compare in any ways. That we shouldn't be comparing.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not posting any pictures of my baby spitting up on Instagram or melting down. Only the cute ones.
Only the cute ones, right? Because that's what it is for. It is about sharing our journeys and happiness and joys, and sometimes emotional moments, but mostly happiness and joys. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with social media. It's our understanding and use of it.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, since we're talking about social media, you also talk about the power of deep work, and you even kind of mention creating that time yourself when you're writing to kind of totally commit to something. Can you talk a little bit about how you block your days for A, this decompression time, and B, this intensive work time to meet your goals? I assume it doesn't include checking Instagram while writing.
No, absolutely not. And I want to invite anybody who is doing any type of, so let's first of all look at the paradigm, right? All of us, especially probably the listeners of this particular podcast, are intellectuals of some type. Your work is not where you have to move boxes from one place to another, which
Right.
means the type of work that you create is a small amount of work that has tremendous amount of impact. That's intellectual work, right? You have a little bit of things. It's almost like tapping a little bit of screw and having the whole engine run because of that, right? So your work is intellectual. Your work is more required to be of the highest quality versus the amount of work that you do,
Right.
right? And if that's the truth of it, it means we must find ways to create the highest quality of our work. It's not about the number of hours you put into the work. It's about the quality of output that you create. Right? Now, let's argue that. Do you really have to be always on the ball if you're creating high quality work? High quality work is an output of downtime, is how quality work is output of focused attention time to something, right? So for example, if you look at my daily schedule, it's a little bit out of whack right now because of the amount of podcasts I'm recording, but otherwise my daily schedule has a lot of boring time or decompression time, as I say. And the reason for that is because I know if I am going to create quality work, it needs to have a lot of boring time. So first of all, I only work 4 hours a day. That's all the work that I do. And I only work 4 days a week. So I only work 4 days a week and 4 hours a day. That's 16 hours of work. Now, usually somebody would argue, Ajit, that's too little. And I totally get that. It is too little. But there's a reason why I've designed my world around this, right? Because the rest of the time I either invest with my family, my friends, my playtime, my travels, my learning time, very importantly, because I love to learn. So a
Right.
lot of times when I'm not actually doing anything, I'm just reading a book. I'm just watching stuff about film or taking courses around filmmaking because that's my new passion. I'm really loving film production. And so I'm like, hey, I want to pursue this different passion that has nothing to do with what I do. There's absolutely nothing. I mean, it can be useful, but it's really nothing to do with it. I don't need to learn about filmmaking, but I love it, right?
Right.
So I'm just learning it, right? I love writing. So I write things that have no purpose of going out anywhere in the world. It's just written for me. But all of those things allow me to be able to create better quality output for the world. Because when I do work, because of all the creativity that I surround myself with, because of all the learning that I surround myself with, because of all the conversations that I surround myself with, the output that I deliver is significantly higher. And as I'm working in this 4x4 model, which I just talked about, the time when I'm actually working, I can't have anything else because I know I only got 4 hours.
Right.
I only have 4 hours. I cannot possibly do anything else. It's not possible for me or anybody else to deliver the amount of quantity of work that you see out in the world is delivered in less than 16 hours a week. And if you are doing that, you are constraining yourself to a time principle. And that time principle comes from not just me, it is well researched and well documented. If you have ever heard about Parkinson's law,
Right.
Parkinson's law states that work will always fill the time allocated to it. Work will always fill the time allocated to it, which means if you give yourself an hour to do something or 10 minutes, you're likely to take as much time to actually finish the task, which means if you assign it 10 minutes, you'll do it in 10. If you assign it 10 hours, you'll do it in 10 hours. I mean, in the second case, right? So it depends on how much time you allocate to it. So you allocate less time and enough time that your brain doesn't go shut down, right? Because that's
Right.
also the challenge of understanding challenge is your challenge can't be so far out that your brain goes into a mode of saying, oh, I can't do this, right? The
Right.
challenge needs to be challenging enough that your brain goes, oh, I can beat this, instead of going, oh shit, that's not going to happen. Right. So you got to be careful of that. But you can use the Parkinson's law to your advantage. You can totally just reframe of saying, hey, I don't need that much time to do this. I can only use this much time. And all of a sudden you have so much free time, and then go mess around on Instagram if you really have to. I mean, it's not that I'm not there. I am there. I respond to every message myself. So it's not that somebody else is doing this stuff for me, but I don't nearly spend as much time. I'm not looking at it all day. I'm looking at it once a day,
Right.
maybe for 10 minutes. And that's all anybody needs. And by Instagram, I mean Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all this stuff. It doesn't need more than 10, 15 minutes of your time every day.
That time blocking is amazing for getting work done. I'm sure you use that for writing this book. Did you find in writing this that you had times where there were blocks, or did you have a pretty good idea before you sat down and put pen to paper what the product was going to be like?
I had somewhat of an idea of what I wanted to write. I didn't want to write a guidebook. I wanted to write a perspective shift, something that would invite you to question your reality in a way. So I kind of knew where I wanted to go, but of course it evolved as I was writing it. So that always happens, but that's just how products are created, right?
Right. And as you looked at that evolution and you put pen to paper, were there any epiphanies that you experienced along the way that kind of like stood out and was like, oh, that was kind of unexpected insight that you're really excited to get out there?
It's an interesting question. Nobody asked me this. Now if I have to reflect back to really think about, was there something, there were probably quite a few chapters that changed because of that, because of epiphany, because when you're writing, it's like almost you're just going at it on a topic, and sometimes you write so much and then you edit it all out. So there was definitely a lot like that, because not all the chapters were designed exactly how they came out.
Right.
But I can't think of one right now at this moment, but probably quite a few things changed as we were creating it.
And
like just the idea of having artwork to everything was something that came as I was writing the book. It wasn't initially thought about, but then we went into saying, hey, if we want somebody to have a perspective shift, one of the big things is to create habits. How do people do that? Right. And if there's a visual memory of something, people tend to do that more easily. So every chapter comes with an artwork with it. And if you go and as you go get the book, there's a special link that you get inside the book in which you can sign up to a membership area where you not only get advanced tools, you actually get the ability to download all of these posters that you can print out and stick it on your wall, stick it anywhere you want, depending on which chapter spoke to you in a way that you would really like to see.
Awesome.
And remind yourself of, yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you mentioned habit change, and I think that's cool that you're adding in those visuals there to help people out. I'm actually in the middle of a summit right now called Done Doing That, and it's all about how to get rid of destructive behavior and gain good behavior. Anything in your experience, I mean, in terms of building habits that you recommend people do or not do? We talked about time blocking, but getting rid of bad habits or getting good ones would have been pivotal to you. And, do you have any recommendations around good habit change?
If you're looking to change habit, I think one of the key factor that not often is talked about is creating a community around the habit.
Right.
It's not discussed enough, and I think it's one of the most critical things that throws you off a habit is if you don't have people who are supporting or believe in the same habit. Right. Because what happens is that we think that it's all we can rah it, we can get it done because we're excited, but day 3 onwards, you need somebody to support your journey. Day 5 onwards, you need somebody to support the journey, because willpower only takes you that far. So if you can create a support group in some way, and it doesn't have to be your family, because sometimes families are not the most supportive people, but it could be people from the outside, and you can utilize them to be able to help you with that.
Yeah, no, I think I totally agree with that. And I know, coaching groups have been an important part for me in terms of having that support system. And I know it's obviously something you're very passionate about as well. If somebody is interested in being coached in different areas of their life, how do you recommend they seek out coaches?
I find coaches. I have found all my coaches at different events. Okay. I've found them on social media. So that's how I would do it as well. I would look for what I'm seeking help in and have a conversation with those people, and you will see if they embody the same values that you would like them to embody, or they actually have some type of results around those areas. And that's how you find the right coaches for yourself.
Awesome. Cool. And then in landing the plane here, anything else that we haven't covered about your book, or kind of thinking about living purposefully, that you think would be good for viewers and listeners to part with?
Well, what I just want to offer as a closing thought is know that life is full of choices, and as much as it may feel like, at often it feels like that we don't have a choice in our life. We always have a choice, and sometimes it's hard to make that choice. Sometimes it is painful to make that choice. Sometimes it seems impossible to make a choice. But in time, with effort, with the right perspective, with the right dialogue, you can make the choice to live the life you want. So don't settle. Don't try to think, oh, it's not for me, or it's for somebody else. Don't settle for any of that stuff. That's all bullshit. You can have a life that you want. It'll take the time and effort that it needs to take, and that's just part of the game, part of the process, part of the dance, part of the music of life. But that's just what it is.
Awesome. Awesome. I think it's a great way to leave everyone right now. So thank you so much, Jeet, for your time, your wisdom, and good luck with this book launch. I'll support in any way I can, and just really appreciate you carving out some time for us today.
Thanks, Ben. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Purpose Up with me, Ben Stein. Please subscribe here on YouTube so you can be updated on when the latest episodes come out, as well on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you consume podcasts. And since you're still sticking around, I've got a special free gift for you. Just go to purposeup.com/free gift, or click this link here to get book recommendations from me, a guided meditation, as well as a book I wrote on how to live your life more purposefully. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it and you.